Good morning. And it is a beautiful morning. On behalf of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Columbus, we welcome you to our Sunday service. I am Tamara Parson, and I serve as your coordinator for our BIPOC, that is Black, Indigenous, and People of Color network, and my pronouns are she, they. We gather in the homelands of the Adena, the Hopewell, the Wyandotte, the Miami, the Seneca, and the Cayuga peoples. Let us take a moment of silence together to express our gratitude and appreciation for the connections of Indigenous people to this place. Today, we will be focusing on Memorial Day, its origins and meanings, and how we honor those who have given their lives to protect our freedom. Amanda Hayes will lead us in our opening hymn, For All That Is Our Life. The words will appear on the screen. It is number 128 in the gray hymnal. Please rise as you are willing and able with us, and let us sing together. For
all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain and loss, for each new thing we learn. For fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good.
My name is Kelly Mcneil, and I have the honor of serving as your Director of Congregational Life, and my pronouns are she, her. Please let us know that you are here today by filling out our check-in form online or at the greeters stand. This simple act helps us maintain connections within our congregation. You can access a digital order of service, the Joys and Sorrows form, and our donation page, as well as the check-in form, by scanning the QR code on the screen, or by visiting firstuucolumbus.org/Sunday. We also have pen and paper Joys and Sorrows cards, which you can submit at the candle table in the back of the sanctuary in the back corner. A couple of announcements this morning. First, the coffee team is looking for volunteers for June. You can sign up in Beach Hall after the service or contact Rose Rossiter. Or if you are interested in joining the welcome team, please reach out to me. We are in look for some more helpers for Sunday morning as well. If you are interested in learning more about our community or are ready to become a member, you are invited to attend our Pathways to Membership class this Saturday from 9 to noon. This will be offered both in person in room 301 as well as online. If you want to participate online, you need to register at firstucolumbus.org/pathways to do so. Or you can email me to get that Zoom link. And now, Jan Phillips has a special announcement from our Board of Trustees.
Hi, everyone. I am Jan Phillips, and I am chair of our Board of Trustees. I'd like to invite you to attend our annual business meeting, which is 2 weeks from today, starting at 11:30 a.m. We will take a few minutes break after the worship service that day, and then gather back up in here at 11:30. The meeting this year will be a hybrid format, allowing you to attend either in person here in the worship center or attending online. As we have in the past couple of years, elections for leaders and our Share the Plate will be online. But the budget and the minutes from our mid-year meeting, those will be approved actually during the meeting. Online voting has started, so please watch your emails and church announcements for more information about how to access your ballot. We will be electing members to the Board of Trustees, the nominating committee, and our moderator, as well as voting on other issues. I want to say that we are grateful to everyone who has agreed to run for election. And as always, you can reach the board at board@firstucolumbus.org if you have any questions or suggestions. Thank you for participating in the business of this congregation, and we look forward to seeing you on June 12th, starting at 11:30 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I would now like to invite our children who would like to help light our chalice by bringing in the light to meet Amanda back in the back of the sanctuary and go out into the welcome hall to prepare. Our young people will return in just a few moments. Let us now center ourselves as we listen to this morning's prelude.
Thank you, Nathan. We now invite our children in. It's time for them to bring in the light. Our chalice lighting words are adapted from a chalice lighting by Tracy Bleakney. This chalice burns with twin flames. The first flame burns for those who seek and defend the right to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, so that each person may live according to conscience in a democratically elected society. The second flame burns for the defenders of freedom, working against those who would impose their own social or political beliefs on others through intimidation or legislation. May we tend this fire always, ever vigilant and courageous in the struggle for freedom and justice for all. Our chalice is lit.
Thank you for helping light our chalice. We are currently putting together Sunday school teaching teams for next year, so please email amber@firstuucolumbus.org to get involved. Today for our story, we have a video about the history of Memorial Day.
G'day folks, Broadcast Cal here. Today we're going to learn about Memorial Day. Oftentimes people confuse Memorial Day and Veterans Day. After you watch this video, be sure to go check out the video I made about Veterans Day so you know the difference. On Memorial Day, we honor those who've given the ultimate sacrifice by laying down their lives for our country while serving in the military. Did you know that Memorial Day was first known as Decoration Day? That's because after the Civil War, people would decorate the graves of fallen soldiers. On May 30th, 1868, President Ulysses S. Grant presided over the first service to honor soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery. After World War I, the holiday included all soldiers who died protecting our freedom. Memorial Day was celebrated on May 30th until 1971, when the Monday holiday law shifted Memorial Day from May 30th to the last Monday in May. On Memorial Day, American flags are raised to half-staff until noon, and then raised to the top of staff until sunset. In the year 2000, Congress established a national moment of remembrance, which asks all Americans to pause for 1 minute at 3 p.m. in an act of national unity. On Memorial Day, we honor the heroes that have given their lives for our freedom. We salute you, heroes. Be sure to share this video so others learn the true meaning of Memorial Day. Broadcast Cal, out.
Please take some time this weekend to reflect on the Memorial Day holiday and to remember the heroes that are important to our country and in your own life. Thank you. I now invite the congregation to remain seated and to form a sheltering arc of love with your arms as we sing our young people back to their families and out to class.
Our centering words this morning are adapted from a Memorial Day reading by Reverend Wayne Arneson. We enter into this season of Memorial Day surrounded by a mighty cloud of witnesses. We remember, first of all, the women and men who are currently serving in the armed forces and we pray for their safe return. We also acknowledge that there are women and men who will not return, and we grieve their passing. We also pause to remember those who are first responders in times of emergency and crisis in our society. The firefighters, healthcare and hospital workers, police, and so many more who have served and even died in dangerous and difficult situations that take a toll on the human heart. On this Memorial Day, we remember those we have loved and lost, especially those who have died from COVID. And we especially remember those who have died from acts of hate and violence in our country. We remember the heroic security guard, Aaron Salter, who gave his life trying to protect the lives of others from violence at the Tops grocery store in Buffalo last week. And we think of those courageous congregants in Laguna Woods, California, who tackled a gunman and restrained him before he could kill more at the church luncheon. And we remember the two teachers, Eva Morales and Irma Garcia, who died protecting their young students in Uvalde, Texas, just a few short days ago. And we remember the 19 young lives in Uvalde cut tragically short in an act of inexplicable violence. We hold all of these names and faces in our mind's eye. We recall the gifts they gave to us through the strength of their being, the depth of their love, the courage of their dying, and the fullness of their living. In the holy quiet of this hour, their names surround us, and they live with us in blessed memory. May we pause together in silence as a tribute to all that they have meant to us.
Thank you so much. I'm the Reverend Joan Van Beesler. My pronouns are she, her. The poem, In Flanders Fields, was written during the First World War by the Canadian physician, Lieutenant Colonel John Mcneil. Now, Mcneil fought in Flanders region of Belgium, where the German army had recently launched one of the first chemical attacks in the history of modern war, and the carnage was as horrible as you might imagine. On May 3rd, 1915, the day before he wrote his famous poem, one of Mcneil's closest friends was killed in a brutal round of fighting and was buried in a makeshift grave with a very simple wooden cross. And wild poppies, beautiful red wild poppies, were already beginning to bloom between the crosses, marking the many graves of those who had died in those Belgian killing fields. The next day, Mcneil composed his poem, noting how death stands as the transition between the struggle of life and the peace that follows. And it's written from the point of view of the dead themselves, and it speaks to their sacrifice and serves as their demand for the living to pray. Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, but scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, we felt dawn, we saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from falling hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If you break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field. Please remain seated as we sing the hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. I'm going to date myself. I'm old enough to remember when Memorial Day was called Decoration Day. Okay. Now, the name of the holiday, as we know, was changed in 1967 to Memorial Day. Well, I was still young, but I do remember my grandmother calling it Decoration Day to her dying day. And I still remember going with her to place flowers on graves of folks we didn't even know in the Kansas City cemetery near her house every May 30th. Now, I already knew that the last day of May meant school vacation and the start of summer, but I didn't really know why my grandmother was placing flowers on graves that day. Now we know today Memorial Day is observed on the last Monday of May each year, changing from its original May 30th. And Memorial Day is not just time for cookouts and picnics and parades, important though those are in our lives. And it's not just a time to watch the Indianapolis 500 car race or shop the latest sale on mattresses, though my spouse and I will most definitely watch the Indy 500. Memorial Day was created as a remembrance for those who died in war. And that is a bit uncomfortable for some of us, since it could be seen as a celebration of war itself. But it's not. And I believe that we can support the troops as human beings who face danger on our behalf, and we can support their families left behind, no matter how we feel about the politics or the policies that led to a war. Perhaps it'll help us understand the day better if we consider just a bit how the celebration has evolved. Now, in the official history, Memorial Day was Decoration Day, was a time to honor the Civil War dead by decorating their graves, first widely observed on May 30th in 1868 to commemorate the sacrifices of Civil War soldiers. And it was the result of a proclamation by General Logan of the Grand Army of the Republic. And he declared, quote, "The 30th of May, 1868 is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion." Now, during that first Decoration Day at Arlington National Cemetery, 5,000 participants helped decorate the graves of the more than 20,000 Union and Confederate soldiers buried in that cemetery. The official story says that the 1868 celebration had been inspired by local observances in various towns throughout America over the 3 years since the end of the Civil War. And several northern and southern towns claimed to be the birthplace of Memorial Day. Columbus, Mississippi, and Richmond, Virginia, and Boalsburg, Pennsylvania, and Carbondale, Illinois. And we've been celebrating it since 1868 with parades and picnics and flowers. Now that's the official story. But I'm going to tell you the real story of the first Decoration Day, as researched by the author Cynthia Abernathy and the Yale historian David Blight. The very first Decoration Day was celebrated by newly freed slaves in Charleston, South Carolina, on May 5th, 1865, barely a year after the end of the Civil War. And they gathered to honor and express their gratitude to the many Union soldiers who had died in the nearby open-air Confederate prison during their long years of captivity. And it's said that all the newly freed people of Charleston, young and old, over 10,000 strong, marched to where the Union soldiers were buried. And there they prayed and they offered eulogies and they placed fresh flowers. And it's hard to imagine the bravery that it took for these formerly enslaved people to publicly march through the city to hold this ceremony. It was not easy to gather like that so soon after the end of slavery, but according to the historians, they rose up, they organized the march, not only to remember, but to assert their own worth and dignity. And it was an act of deep courage and faith, and it was a concrete act of hope. Yale historian David Blight describes it in his book, Race and Reunion, and he notes that the war was over and Memorial Day had been founded by African Americans in a ritual of remembrance and consecration. But the struggle to own the meaning of Memorial Day, he says, and of Civil War memory had only just begun. Now, in time, Memorial Day morphed into a day to commemorate all Civil War soldiers, both Union and Confederate, in an effort to kind of unify the country. And following World War I, as we've heard, it was expanded to include remembrance of the sacrifice of soldiers in all wars. And Cynthia Abernathy writes, "The holiday lost its original meaning as a celebration of freedom for the former slaves who were thankful for their liberation. But we can remember. We can remember," she says, "and teach our children about the injustice that so many worked so hard to end and about what still needs to be done." Today, how shall we remember those who put their lives on the line to protect us from injustice and harm? Of course, we remember the soldiers of the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Revolutionary War, and others. But I believe our rituals of remembrance and consecration should also include those who served in other ways and too often died in that service to protect our lives and our freedom. And I'm thinking, of course, of firefighters, emergency med techs, nurses, doctors, healthcare workers of all kinds, janitors in the hospitals, those police who lived their pledge to serve and protect, and so many more who've given their lives. And yes, I include the janitors and nurses' aide during the early days of COVID who went to work day after day in overcrowded and deadly ICU units. And I include the courageous security guard Aaron Salter at the Tops Market in Buffalo, protecting shoppers and losing his life in the act. And I include the two elementary school teachers, Irma Garcia and Eva Morales, who died this past Tuesday in Uvalde, desperately trying to shelter their young students from a shooter's violent rampage. And I know that these recent tragedies and all too new heroes are weighing on all of our hearts today. There may come a time when we too may be called to act courageously, to risk our own comfort, if not our lives, or maybe even risk our safety to preserve our freedom. We can see that many of the liberties we take for granted are under attack right now. And I'm not only talking about, but I am talking about the failure of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the failure of the Women's Health Act, or the likely overturning of Roe v. Wade. These national policies are in grave danger, and the future is truly bleak. But at the state level, too, we see that there are far too many of our freedoms and rights under attack already. I first want to raise up that the simple laws that support it, a culture that might not directly pull a trigger, but certainly inspires mass shootings like those in Buffalo, in California, and Uvalde. How long and death run unchecked and unchallenged by us, by our voice and our vote? We do need to rise to hold those in power accountable and demand that enough. We find that from Texas to Georgia to Florida and beyond, legislators are trying to suppress the vote with restrictive laws, even here in Ohio, to make it more difficult to vote, especially for young people, disabled, and the poor. And when it comes to raising our collective voice, we find that there are new laws in Louisiana, Florida, maybe even here in Ohio, that make it more dangerous to gather and legally, peacefully protest. Laws that impede our right to take our grievances to those in power. House Bill 109 in Ohio would criminalize even peaceful protesters and those organizations and congregations that support them. I know that schools are on our minds today. Of course they are. And we see education bills that would deny our children the right to an honest education, age appropriate, of course, about our complex and nuanced national history, as opposed to a myth of white Europeans moving in manifest destiny to take over North America. Well, there's a raft of proposals out there to restrict what teachers can say and what students can read and learn about history, race, gender, orientation, both in primary and secondary schools, as well as in state-supported universities. And yeah, Ohio is considering a Don't Say Gay law, too. And we know that LGBTQ folk have always lived under a cloud of threat. But now some states have laws that deny necessary medical care to vulnerable trans youth, despite their parents' and doctors' support. Our most vulnerable youth are at risk. And book banning taking place in 86 school districts in 26 states so far, removing works like books by Judy Blume and Toni Morrison, banning biographies of Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Malala Yousafzai. And I note that our free press and journalists themselves are under attack, so we remember the slogan of the Washington Post is, "Democracy dies in darkness." And finally, I will include the right to choose whether to bear children or not, and when is being restricted in so many states. And Ohio is considering its own trigger ban to ban all abortions with no exceptions for rape or incest if Roe is overturned. There's more. Sure, there's more. Time is short, and I'm making myself kind of depressed up here, and I'm making you all depressed out there, and maybe I'm making you more than a little bit angry, too. But putting it all together, we can see that our collective focus as a people is being drawn away from open public discussion and towards political fiction, away from real history and towards manufactured myth, away from meaningful voting and towards a fake democracy, away from the rule of law and towards celebrity regime. The forces that would deny our freedom and democracy today will likely become more overt in their actions as we move closer to the elections of 2022 and certainly in 2024. They will play on our fears of inflation and our anger over high gas prices. And I can understand that. I looked at my grocery bill last week and I was not a happy camper. But I also know that we have seen many economic cycles like this in the past, and we have persevered together. I remember the Great Recession of 2008. And these forces may play on our fears of gun violence, to impose harsher incarceration laws, or militarize the police even more, or try to militarize our teachers rather than begin to address the real roots of the tragedy of a rampant gun culture. So in elections this fall, I think we're going to be asked to choose between anger over gas prices and democracy, higher grocery bills or democracy, our fears or democracy. And we have that choice. It's in our hands. How shall we remember those who gave their lives to protect our freedom this Memorial Day? Now, on Monday, 3 p.m., we should all pause and remember as the wreaths are being laid in Arlington Cemetery. And of course, we should vote. I don't need to tell this crowd this. This is a basic no-brainer for most of us. But I would challenge us to actually get out of our comfort zones and proactively assist others, our kids, our grandkids, our neighbors, our friends, strangers, to register and vote. This may be harder than ever before if there are new voting restriction laws in place, and nothing Nothing helps more than face-to-face personal invitations to register and vote. And we can support, of course, with money and volunteer effort, and even the scary act of phone banking, the ongoing work of host organizations registering folk across the country, like the League of Women Voters and You the Vote. I know, voting is flawed. It is imperfect as a method of change. But it's the tool we have right now to hold politicians accountable and tell them that enough is enough. And just this past Friday, Ohio Supreme Court Justice O'Connor advised us as Ohio voters, saying that she's witnessed the ways in which constitutional reforms may be frustrated by hyperpartisanship and the power of inertia. And she adds, Ohioans have the power to change these dynamics. That opportunity, she says, must not be wasted. And perhaps most difficult, we need to work to educate ourselves and others about the dangers to our freedom that we face today. Folk are so angry about inflation and gas prices, it's hard to see that bigger, scarier picture. And although it's pretty harsh, I want to share finally here a quote by David Korn of Mother Jones when he writes, here's a perplexing question. How can we convince Americans that the nation is undergoing a democracy crisis that threatens the foundation of our constitutional order? Sure, the folks reading my newsletter get it, and probably several million and beyond that. But for most of our fellow citizens, the fact that the United States is edging closer to authoritarian peril doesn't truly register. Mainstream America is not alarmed or put off by the malicious schemers trying to rob us of our democratic birthright. We need to do all we can to make this situation change. So this Memorial Day, we should remember those in the past and those who continue to this very day to sacrifice their lives in the cause of freedom and democracy and the right to just live in peace. Sure, we have our picnics and our gatherings, and at my house, the Indy 500. And we should also give thanks for those rights and freedoms that we do possess now, and pray and work together for their continuation into the future. As McCrae's poem says, to you, from falling hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. And when we take up that torch of freedom, this is how we shall remember. May it be so.
It is now time to support our community with an offering. We appreciate your generosity, and regardless of what you are able to give, we appreciate your presence here with us today. This is the last Sunday in May, during which we are sharing our offering plate with Pathway Clubhouse. Pathway Clubhouse provides a friendly, communal, local space for adults living with mental illness. Pathway empowers its members through social relationships, community involvement, and opportunities for education and employment. Your gifts help build a better church and a better world. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bob Mills, and this is Sharon Hammersley, and we are your pastoral listeners this morning. For our caring meditation, I want to offer words adapted from a prayer by the Reverend Wayne Arneson. We join together now in a time of meditation and prayer to remember the many vital connections that sustain and uplift us through the religious community. We remember those who preceded us, whose contributions built a free faith, who built this home for its practice. We remember those around us, whose continuing care in thought and deed is an ongoing blessing in our lives, keeping the dream of free religion alive in our time. We remember those who will follow us, the children presently in our care, and those not yet come to light, who will inherit the work of our hands and hearts. We also lift up the children, teachers, parents, and community of Uvalde, Texas, and the people of Buffalo, New York, and Laguna, California, and the many others who have experienced the tragedy of senseless gun violence. We lift up the people of Ukraine, who are laying their lives on the line for freedom, and we remember those who support them. Today, we sit surrounded by these many connections, both visible and invisible, that remind us every day that we are not alone. We have one joy and one sorrow that were brought to us during this past week. Happy birthday to Reverend Marion Stewart, who will celebrate her birthday on June 3rd. So remember that and let her know. And then a sorrow. Kim asks for prayers, love, and light for her dearest friend Brandon as he undergoes treatments for brain tumors. Surgery is inevitable, and they await the doctor's direction as to when this will take place. The world is in dire need of more people like him. I should note, this is not Brandon Moss, our music director. This is another Brandon. We encourage you to visit the Caring Table in Beach Hall after the service to sign caring cards. Whether or not you know the people, this longtime tradition of signing cards in person is an important outreach to the members and friends. And now for the joys and sorrows that you submitted this morning.
Good morning. Marilyn W. reports that she is celebrating the graduation of her granddaughter Tara from high school. Tara not only graduated from high school, but she already has her certificate to be an LPN. Congratulations, that's a wonderful achievement. Guy S. says, I've lost my best friend from childhood, John, last week, and who suffered a heart attack and died Tuesday evening. We send our caring thoughts to Guy and to John and to their families. Brad B. says, I am very sad about the number of mass shootings in the U.S., a country that has 120 guns for every 100 people. And another note, we are planning to send carrying cards to the families of all of the children whose lives were lost in Uvalde this week.
As I ring this lovely temple bell, I invite you into a moment of shared silence to reflect and imagine, pray, or simply breathe together. And then we'll ring the bell a second time to continue our service. Reverend David Bumbaugh brings us our closing words. We here are dedicated to the proposition that behind all of our differences, beneath all of our diversity, there's a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time and death and grief and the space between the stars. We here are called to live as witnesses to that greater unity. Amen. Shalom. Blessed be. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and sing the song Breaths. It's number 1001 in the teal hymnal. We'll also have the words on the slides. And Amanda will do a wonderful job of leading us in this. Bless you.
Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Zah, whoosh, ah, whoosh. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling trees. They are in the groaning woods. They are in the crying grass. They are in the moaning rocks. The dead are not under the earth. So listen more often voice of the waters. Zah, whoosh, ah, whoosh, zah, whoosh, ah, whoosh. If you are joining us online, I invite you to bring your chalice closer so that we can extinguish our chalices together. And if you are here in person, then after the postlude, you're welcome to go to Beach Hall for coffee and conversation. I invite you all to join me in speaking our vision statement as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of vision. As we go forth, let us heal and transform ourselves and our world through reason and love. Our flame is extinguished, but the light lives on in our hearts and our lives. Please remain seated as Nathan plays our postlude. We look forward to seeing you at coffee hour. Thank you.